All right, so The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered has been out for a little bit, and along with that came an update that gave us the Grounded 2 documentary. And of course, everybody's been talking about the very end of the documentary where Neil Druckmann talks about the future of The Last of Us and this game franchise, and he teases Tommy game that they've had in the works for a little bit, and a story that they've had that feels really solid, but that they just haven't made, that they actually thought were going to make. But instead of creating that game, they instead chose to address the crunch issues and the work issues in Naughty Dog, as they didn't want to overload their staff. And so we'll see if that ever becomes a thing. I might do a video on what I think that story is actually about, because I have a pretty strong idea as to what it would be. I assume it would be like a Miles Morales kind of game, where I actually think it would be a full-fledged game that would just be shorter than normal, that would probably cost around like $50 or something. But we're not going to talk about that today. Instead, I want to talk about where I think The Last of Us Part 3 is going to go now that we have some more information of her, and I've heard some things. Obviously, each game has had its theme. The first game was about love and the things people will do for love. And so obviously, Joel and Ellie, it was about the love that they eventually shared. And then at the end, the big twist of Joel doing something that normally he probably would have never done, because of the love that he did, killed so many people and possibly doomed all of humanity. And that's kind of what that story was about. The second story, many people think it's about violence equals bad. Not at all what the theme of the story is. The second story is about grief and what you will do because of grief. And so both Abby and Ellie are grieving the loss of their parent or parental figure. And so you pretty much just watch them obliterate each other as a way of trying to cope with the grief that they feel. Of course, it doesn't really work. And in the end, they kind of figure that out for themselves and go, you know what? This probably isn't going to solve the grief that I'm feeling, that I should probably just let this go. And they do. And so that brings us to the final game, which Neil has said is the final game, or at least he's alluded to it, because he said that these parts are Ellie's story, that these are all about Ellie, and there's one more piece to the puzzle, one more story to tell in this kind of original Last of Us Part 1, 2, 3 thing. And so the third installment will be the final installment by the sounds of everything we're hearing. That doesn't mean we won't get spin-off games and stuff like that. It just means that this story with Ellie is going to probably conclude here. And so he says in the Grounded 2 documentary that he has finally found the theme that he was looking for. And I've got a very strong hunch as to what that theme is. And so I wanted to dive into that with you guys and some of the predictions I have for this story moving forward. So let's dive into it. So that final theme that I think The Last of Us Part 3 will be about, and the thing that makes the most logical sense to conclude this series on, is forgiveness, which is not a title that a lot of people get excited about, but I think there are so many pieces to this story that it actually could make a really, really compelling story. And so I'm going to dive into some predictions, specifically 3 predictions as to what I think we'll see in this story. I actually feel pretty confident about them. I'm not confident about how they'll happen, but I'm actually confident that they will happen. I would be more surprised if they didn't, just like how before Part 2 came out, I was confident Joel was going to die in Part 2, but I would have never been able to predict the way he died and how soon he died in Part 2. I feel really confident about these 3 things happening in Part 3. I just don't know for sure how they'll happen, but I'm going to share my theory with you guys. So bear with me, knowing that I know I'm probably wrong on how these things happen, but I feel pretty confident they will happen. So let's dive right into it. So the first big thing is I think Abby will be in the third game. I don't think they introduced a character that you played as for half of the game just to not have her appear in the last installment. And I actually think that this game is going to force Abby and Ellie to work together, that will be part of them forgiving each other, because I actually think that they need to learn to forgive each other. And I don't think just not killing somebody is actually forgiving them, that for both of them just choosing to not kill the other, I don't think that's actual forgiveness. I think that's just like the bottom line of normal behavior. And so how would they actually do this? Because obviously Abby and Ellie do not like each other. Just because they didn't kill each other doesn't mean they want to hang out together and become best buds. And so what's actually going to happen? Well, we know that Abby and Lev have gone to the Fireflies. We know that Factions 2 was supposed to be about that Firefly clan and kind of how they rose to be who they were. Sadly, we're probably never going to get that story that was in there. But we do know that Abby is now a part of the Fireflies again. And what are the Fireflies about? They're all about finding a cure to save humanity. That's why they exist. And Abby knows the person who is the cure. I don't think she's going to want to send them to go and get Ellie, but I think somehow it will get revealed that she knows the person, because I assume that Fireflies would know that this person existed at one point. I think that would actually be a pretty big deal to the Fireflies, and they would have known about Ellie. And I think somehow Abby will accidentally reveal that she knows who this person is, and she'll have conflicted feelings about telling them who she is and where she is, because she's like, dude, she killed all my friends. This is not a person we really want to go after. This is probably a big mistake. But the Fireflies are going to be like, we need to cure the world. Like, tell us where she is. And I think Abby will reluctantly agree to tell them where she last knows Ellie was. And that the Fireflies will head off to go and essentially try to kidnap Ellie to make a cure. I don't think the Fireflies are going to be great people. They weren't in the first game. I don't expect them to be like that in the third game. I think they're going to get blinded by their mission, like they often are, and so they will go after her. Now, how will they team up? I think what's going to happen is, long story short, they'll find Ellie. And I think, and I'll dive into this a bit later, that Ellie is trying to learn how to forgive Joel by actually living into what he wanted for her. And one of those things is going to look like taking care of JJ and being with Dina. That Neil Druckmann has revealed before that the ending of the game originally ended with you clearly seeing Ellie going off to go and return to JJ because she would have found his stuffed toy and taken it and then headed off. And so I think that she actually has gone back to Jackson, has gone to find Dina, and they're actually building a life together. And I think some time will have passed where JJ's a bit older, but I think essentially Abby is going to find Ellie and is going to realize that she's essentially a mother. And all of a sudden have all of these conflicting feelings because she herself had her parental figure ripped from her by somebody who killed her dad out of what he thought was the right thing to do. I don't think she's going to actually be able to bring herself to do that. That she's going to be like, if I kill Ellie, I rip her from her kid, and now I have become the person that I set out to kill. And so I actually think she's going to have a ton of conflicting feelings. I think she's going to turn on the Fireflies, and she's actually going to defend Ellie with Lev, and they're actually going to escape, and Abby is going to fight together with Ellie to try to keep her safe. And it's in that journey together that they're actually going to learn forgiveness, which then brings me to my second point. And I think Abby's going to die. That just like how Joel in the first game, you felt that this guy's done too much to probably make it through the next game. I think the same applies to Abby. I think she's done too much to be able to actually make it through this franchise with no consequences, that I think she is going to die. And ironically, she's going to die doing the thing that Joel wanted to do, which is defending Ellie. That I genuinely think that in this journey that they take together, that they are going to feel the weight of how similar the two of them are, and they're actually going to find a camaraderie, which will be a little strange, and that they'll feel strange about themselves. And that because Abby doesn't want JJ to end up like her, she's going to die essentially defending Ellie against the Fireflies at some point. I don't know fully what that will look like, but I strongly believe that will happen. And then the rest of the game will be Lev and Ellie essentially trying to run away and find a way to get to safety. And Lev will be emboldened to defend Ellie because Abby died to protect Ellie. And so it's going to be a true turn from the second game where she's going to protect Ellie because essentially Joel can't. And I think that's a really interesting angle to take. And so from there, we'll see Ellie and Lev work together. I don't fully know what that'll look like or how they'll be able to do this in a way that doesn't feel cheesy or weird, but I really trust Naughty Dog that they will, and I feel pretty strongly that this stuff's actually going to happen. But then the last thing, and one of the most important things, is these games are about Joel and Ellie. That even if Joel isn't in the game, this part 1, 2, and 3 story is about Ellie and about her relationship with Joel. That in the first game, we obviously saw that relationship, and in the second game, it was all about that relationship. That it was about Joel completely, and it was about the fracturing of their relationship and the regret of their relationship and the grief that she experienced from that relationship. That even though Joel wasn't in the entire game, his presence was felt throughout the entire game. And the end of the game, I don't think it ended like this for just no reason. Naughty Dog isn't that silly. Is it ends with Ellie telling Joel that she wants to forgive him, but she doesn't know if she can, but she wants to at least try. And I think that that'll be a large part of what that game is about, is Ellie actually trying to learn to forgive Joel. That she feels like he essentially took something from her, and that she doesn't want to hold on to that anger, and wants to be able to actually forgive him. And I think, again, like I said, part of that will be her actually trying to live into what Joel wanted for her, which is finding meaning in life outside of having to be the cure for the world. That I think that'll be a big part of this game, is Ellie actually learning that you don't have to die for the entire world to have a meaningful life. And part of that will be her actually being with Dina and raising JJ, that she's actually going to find really deep meaning in that and not want to let that go. And I think that'll be a huge theme in part 2, is her wrestling through actually learning to forgive Joel. And so his presence is going to be felt, I imagine, in a way that you won't see him very often. I could see flashbacks or even like dream sequences where she has conversations with Joel, but I don't think he'll appear that much, but his presence will still be felt, just like how he didn't appear that much in part 2, but his presence was pretty strongly felt. And I think that somehow it's going to end with her being able to live the life that Joel wanted for her. But I still think she's going to die for a cure, but I think it's going to be a way that it'll be the best of both worlds, where essentially she's going to get to live a full life, and then she will essentially die of old age and offer herself to be studied to produce a cure. That's my guess. I don't know how you do that without it feeling cheesy and weird and like fanboy-y, but I do think that that will happen, because we've heard Neil say that Ellie's immunity is actually going to be a big part of part 3, and I think part of that will be the Fireflies coming after her, and also part of that will be, I do think it'll end with her essentially being the cure for humanity, but she didn't have to die as a teenager in order to do that. That she was able to live a meaningful life and was able to do that and find meaning and find forgiveness for Joel outside of just offering herself as a cure. And so, in conclusion, those are all my thoughts. I know I'm probably wrong about the details, but I do think forgiveness is the natural conclusion to this story. And I do think we are going to see Abby and Ellie work together in some way in this story. I feel very confident about that. I feel very confident that Abby is going to die in this game, and that she's actually going to die sacrificing herself for Ellie in some way. And I do think this game, a heavy theme of it, will be Ellie learning to forgive Joel and to live into the life that Joel wanted for her. And I do think that they will conclude it with Ellie being the cure. I don't think they have her being the cure just for no reason. I do think that it will play a significance. Neil said that her immunity is going to be a very important part of part 3. And so, yeah, that's what I think. I think that makes the most logical sense. Again, the details, I'm probably wrong, but I want to know what you guys think. So head down in the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts. Do you think this is a logical conclusion to this kind of Ellie storyline for The Last of Us? What do you think the main theme of the third game is going to be? Do you agree with me that it's going to be forgiveness, or do you think it'll be something else? What do you think about Abby and Ellie having to learn to work together and actually being forced to actually genuinely forgive each other? Which doesn't mean you still don't hold people accountable to their actions, but it doesn't mean that you can find a way to forgive them. Do you think Abby's going to die in the third game? Do you think she's going to die actually defending Ellie? What do you think about the theory that the reason why Abby chooses to defend Ellie is because she doesn't want JJ to end up like her, and she can't imagine taking away someone's parental figure from them. And do you think that Ellie is going to forgive Joel in the third game, that you will see her actually try to live into the life that he wanted for her? And do you think that the game will kind of end with her becoming the cure for humanity? Let me know in the comment section down below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that junk, and I will see you guys in the next one.